Hello, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the Visual Effects Society, the visual effects industry's global professional honorary society, thank you so much for joining us for what will certainly be a dynamic conversation with several exemplary women leaders in visual effects. I'm Lisa Cooke, BES, an executive producer at Tippett Studio and the former board chair of the Visual Effects Society. I'm going to be hosting this conversation about the pathways that these women took to their positions of leadership, their insights and advice to the next generation of leaders, and what more our industry can do to uplift and support women from diverse backgrounds. Joining me today are Janet Lewin, Senior Vice President, Lucasfilm Visual Effects, and General Manager of ILM. Chrysta Marie Burton, Senior Vice President, Physical Production and Visual Effects at Paramount Pictures, and Kathy Chasen-Hay, Senior Vice President of Visual Effects at Skydance Productions. So let's dive right in. I just want to go around and have you each tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into visual effects, and your pathway to the position of leadership that you're in today. Chrysta, let's start with you.
Oh no. Okay. Okay, well, as we kind of talked in our preamble, my pathway to visual effects is actually on this call, so I will mention that in a moment. But I started out, I went to school at University of Southern California and the film school, and came out into animation. I started actually in television animation at Sony Television as well as Nickelodeon. And then somehow my resume landed on ILM's lap, and landed literally on Janet Lewin's lap, who called me for an interview. And it was, I could not tell you, the best day of my life, changed my life forever in all of the best possible ways. But my first introduction into visual effects was actually at ILM, through Janet, who brought me on to a film called Mission Impossible 3, where I met one of my other mentors, Sherry Hansen, who I work with today. So, as we talk about how we get from point A to point B and how we find ourselves in leadership roles, what I've always said, and a lot of the folks that we've all worked with have said, is like, find your film family early. Like, find them early, stay connected, stay networked. The people that I talk to today are the same people I talked to 20 years ago when I started, who have helped me then, are helping me still today, and we pass that down. And so, as you try to find your footing, know that there are people out there, and they do want you to succeed, and they will continue to help you your whole career as they have me. So.
And what was your pathway towards where you are today?
Leadership, again, I think a lot of that came from ILM, and I think it came from, people believing that you are able, and gives you opportunities. I think my first big opportunity, Jen, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were opening up the office in Singapore, you guys
Yes.
shipped me off to Singapore. And I remember going out there, and certainly there were producers on the ground, in San Francisco, but there was nobody there in Singapore. And so it was me and Nigel Sumner, who was our visual effects supervisor at the time, and we built a team and we grew it. And it was an incredible opportunity that I probably shouldn't have had, but I did, because I had people who believed in me and thought that I could do it. And it was a fantastic way to figure it out. So I think, especially earlier days, it's like we just would shove people off the cliff and hope that they fly, hope their little wings start flapping before they hit the bottom. And I think that's kind of what happened with me. A lot of people just shoved me out the door, and I was like, okay, I'll figure it out, because I have no other choice. But I've always, wanted the ascent. I mean, Lynn Brennan was also one of my first bosses, and it was just amazing to see a woman in that position. Chrissy England, to see a woman in that position. Again, you're going to hear me talk a lot about ILM, but they have incredible women running that organization and have had that for decades, and it's rare. It's rare, but it's what I grew up with. So that's how I learned to be in this business and how I learned to also nurture in this business. And so, when we do the right work, it does trickle down to the next generations who say, this is how I came up, and so I'm going to do the same. You don't think about it, right? So we do what we're taught, and if you have great teachers and mentors, then you get on the right path. And eventually I, left the nest again. I left ILM. I went out and freelanced in both animation and visual effects. My first freelance gig was Rango, also with the same company, but, on the other side. But that's really where you got shoved out into the real world. And Gore Verbinski's world is very different than the soft, cushiony landing of being at a facility inside ILM where you're protected. You see all the things, all the elements, and you learn how to survive. And we, did plenty of freelance work together. And I worked with J.J. Abrams, continuously worked at Bad Robot for many years for them directly. But you never stop growing. You never stop wanting to grow. You never stop wanting to kind of achieve more. And so I am where I am, but I'm not done. And so I've still got a long way to go to get to where these ladies are on the panel, but I'm working my way there, I hope.
Great, thank you. Hey, let's move over to your mentor, Janet Lewin.
Well, that was such a lovely tribute to ILM, Chrysta.
Yeah.
So I'll give a little preamble about my career. Interestingly, last night I got my R2D2 for being at the company for 30 years.
Wow.
So, which is a real testament to the company, and and visual effects as an industry, it's always changing. It's so interesting. There's so much opportunity for growth. I do think
You started when you were 10. You started there at 10.
I'm going to be giving you $200 after this. This is so great. Everybody, yeah, I got to start writing checks. But yeah, I started in the purchasing department as a temp it was supposed to be just a couple of months of filing purchase orders. And I always had aspirations to be in the film industry. I didn't even know what visual effects really was. But I got my foot in the door. And I kind of wove my way through the organization, always saying yes to opportunities. I had great mentors, like Chrysta mentioned. Chrissy England, I worked directly with Chrissy, Denise Ream, Lewin, Kathy Kennedy, so many other women, who, I could see myself in them, which I think is really important for women to aspire to leadership roles where they say, well, she's doing it. How does she do it? Maybe I can do it. Maybe I have what it takes. And likewise, for women who are in leadership positions, to look for the potential and talent like I saw in Chrysta. I obviously have a great eye for potential. But yeah, so I fell in love with producing, with visual effects producing at ILM. And then I got into the head of production role at ILM, moved over to Lucasfilm when Kathy came on board in 2013. And played the kind of studio side role, which was, like Chrysta says, was really great for me to have that exposure to a different side of the industry. And then I came back to ILM in the pandemic, kind of having a foot in both worlds. And I love what I do.
Kathy, let's hear your story.
So I have a different trajectory. I did not start at ILM. I took a job. I actually started at KCET Television a long time ago, and I realized I wanted hands-on. My photography was my thing. I feel like, I did visual effects without knowing, dodging and burning, black and white photography. And I answered an ad for a company called Digital Productions. And I was the traffic coordinator. Don't even know what that job is. And I would have to say at the time, who were my role models? Sherry McKenna, and then a few years later, Nancy St. John. They were very strong women who ran, Sherry ran Robert Abels and Digital Productions. Nancy St. John came in from Omnibus, and they took over the two companies they later called Dead on Arrival. And Actually, because we didn't really have editorial, I started changing the film in the digital film printer. And I was so excited, $25 on a Saturday to take the film to the lab. From there, I actually got into, I became a visual effects editor. And that was the first half of my career. I went to DreamQuest Images, worked on The Abyss and Total Recall, and worked for Hoyt Yateman, not a female role model, but Hoyt was, I think my film school was working for DreamQuest for 6 years. And I was a visual effects editor, loved it. I liked compositing. I did teach myself the Avid because I had to go from film to analog to digital, also comped on Lightworks, and did production side as a visual effects editor. And then I was on a show for Bruckheimer Films. And no, let me stop for a sec. I started having kids throughout this whole ordeal of working. And I have at the time had 3 small children. And I got a call from somebody who wanted to make a career change, found this company that needed some leadership and needed a VFX producer. And I told this is a head of post over at Bruckheimer Films. I said, I've never been a VFX producer. I went over to a company called Asylum, a bunch of young, really creative people. A mom with 3 kids under 5. And I went in there as the VFX producer. So I'm a self-taught VFX producer. That was Pearl Harbor, several films.
I was one of the producers on Pearl Harbor as well at ILM.
Yeah. And we took, because Asylum was not ILM. In fact, that starts the relationship, I think, at the time was Asylum and ILM, because then we got into Pirates. And
it was Pat Sanston.
Yes, it was.
Together.
He's the one who called and changed my career trajectory. And then, of course, that's how I got into VFX producing. We were on Pirates, and at Asylum, we were taking overflow work from ILM, and then it got to maybe Pirates 3, and we started helping out on the Maelstrom. And we were so proud of ourselves that ILM called us to help. And Janet, I don't know if you remember, but we were on, they weren't Zooms at the time. I don't know what those calls were called at the time, but we started working closely with you guys. I worked at Asylum until they had to shut their doors. And I went right into, because I was working on a show for Fox, went back to production side, but as a VFX producer, and worked on a few projects. This Means War, a couple of projects for Fox, Chronicle. And I was on a show, and I was in Vancouver, and I was standing on a bridge, and Carl Pedregal called from Lionsgate, needed help on a show. He was just finishing Hunger Games, which, by the way, I think Brooke Breton helped out on. There's a few, because I want to name a couple of mentors, because back when I was at Asylum and it was Master and Commander, I met Brooke Breton, and it was a huge show. By the way, ILM was also on that show, had to come in. It was much bigger than anyone could handle. Brooke Breton came in and kind of took over. And I think she saw how hard I worked, and she's been a mentor ever since. And she's the governor of the Academy. And I'm skipping forward, but I do want to bleed into how we can help other women. She encouraged me to join the executive committee in the Academy. And I did get into the Academy in 2019. And our mission is, yes, to get fellow women, to get also creative visual effects producers, because there is such a thing as a creative visual effects producer, and therefore they should be able to get into the Academy.
Well, not just get into the Academy, but be on the ticket. I mean, because I think,
yes,
that's
100%. And we can talk about that, because what you need to show, because I think in the positions that we all have, Chrysta, you included, we have several small shows, large shows, and quite often you can be a VFX producer and the VFX supervisor, because you may not have a large enough budget, or you are calling the shots, you are finaling shots, you are leading the charge with previs, and your title may be VFX producer. And so that is a nice caveat for the VFX producer to also be on the ticket if you have creative input. So that is one way I feel that we're helping, and I do think Brooke is leading the charge with that, and I'm honored to be on that committee and try to help our fellow women, because there are so few women supervisors, and we do need to support each other. And on the mentor side of it, I like to think that I'm mentoring other younger women at the places I've been. I feel like it's the journey. I didn't finish my trajectory, but I did get that phone call, went to Lionsgate. That is where I met Chrysta on some of the shows we were on. You were with Charlie Gibson on Mockingjay. And I actually went back to, my kids are grown up now, and I went back to VFX producing. I decided studio life wasn't for me. And I did a couple of shows as a VFX producer. And then I actually did get a call with Stephanie Allen, because I worked for her on a show, and she had me meet David Ellison and company. And that's how I ended up at Skydance. And I've been there.
You
the
forgot
last
that
5.5
I called
years.
you also about a producing opportunity at Lucasfilm. So see, we're
You did.
all
You did.
6 degrees of
I love
separation.
what other advice would you give to young women today that are trying to get up on a path that would end up where you guys are, or just even advance their own careers? Anybody want to jump? Yeah.
Well, I think any of the jobs, they're not easy. And I think that people have to get over that. Whatever, it's not going to be a free ride. It's not going to be an easy train. It's hard. It's many hours. It's not sleeping. They're all like, it's not, it's not, it can be glamorous. It is glamorous at the end when you're finally done, but it's hard to get there. It's fun to, be a part of the early days of a project and really kind of creatively pull it together. But then the hard work comes in. And so I don't want to underestimate that. I think all of us on this call too, probably, even Kathy with you and your kids, and Janet, you and your kids, we have missed many, many, many things, many events, many friends, many weddings, and I think that it is competitive, but the best, push through. So I want to stress the importance of, yes, we help each other. Yes, we mentor each other. Yes, we give guidance, but also like minds do kind of mesh. So we've all talked about the same. I worked with Kathy. Kathy got a call from, Steph Allen. Steph Allen gave me my first freelance gig job. Like it is a small group of people that call each other over and over and over again. Why? Because we have proven that we can be, counted on and can deliver, and at the highest possible quality. And so I think that it's important to start there as the base of, like, work your ass off. You have to
I love that.
first,
Well,
right?
I agree with you 100% for our roles, but there are lots of other opportunities for women to aspire to get into leadership roles in visual effects. And I think one of the things that occurred to me is our structure on the facility side is very much based on how men work, And so there are barriers to women, perceived or real. And some of it is about women needing to take a chance on themselves, advocate for themselves. And some of it's on the facility, saying, things like, let's give you a stretch assignment. Let's look at job sharing. Let's let you work part-time, because, we do have busy lives, and oftentimes the responsibility for the family falls to women, and that shouldn't be a bad thing. It shouldn't be a barrier. It's actually a good thing. I mean, we should lean into the strengths that women in particular can bring to a whole array of jobs, from multitasking and collaborating, just what we're talking about here, how we look out for each other, So I do think, what I try to do at ILM is create a platform for women to inspire each other. We did a company meeting, kind of like this one. It was a little bigger. We had, 8 or so different women around the globe in different roles, leadership roles, talk about their career path as a way to inspire people within the organization. And then I had a couple of follow-up meetings to talk about, how are we going to solve this together? Because I don't have all the answers. So being ready to listen and adapt and try things out as a company, I think is really important. And then for women themselves, I think, we all probably were pretty good at taking that jump out of the nest, like Chrysta said, and finding our wings. But not everybody is built that way, and you have to be willing to overcome the imposter syndrome, push yourself,
Yeah.
And know what you want, and that you probably will be having to make some sacrifices along the way. But there is a community that can support you as well.
Kathy, you want to
Yeah,
add any
I
advice to the next generation?
I do, because I think what's important is oftentimes, especially for women, you go through your life and career trying to make people comfortable, happy. We tend to apologize before the beginning of a sentence. I want to tell other women to unapologetically take the seat at the table, voice your opinion, take all emotion out of all situations, because of the tone of our voices, we are at a disadvantage when you're at the table with deeper voices. And I do think it's important to speak up when you have an opinion. And I think too many of us were told to not speak up. And it's especially difficult for women when you come into a meeting and you're with a bunch of men. And I'm sorry, but people do look at the taller man who has a deeper voice. So it is important to take that seat at the table and speak your mind, and take chances. And I think we're all saying the same thing.
Those are really good points that I hadn't thought about it in quite the same way. I think it's also about finding allies with men too. It's not just women supporting
Absolutely.
women. One of the things that was so encouraging to me, just, hearkening back to those meetings that I held, is a lot of men showed up because they wanted to learn too, and they wanted to help,
I love that. I
you
love
know?
that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we have to
That
break the patterns.
that's great that you said that too, Janet, just because there are a lot of great male allies to us, and they support us in all of those roles. The other thing I was going to say is on set, and this is something, Chrysta, I know you've had to battle with too.
I'm gonna
It is
go
a it's a
next. Yeah.
it's a man's world, and so you
Yes.
do again need to show up to that conference room table in the war room, and let's just say a first AD is like, what do you mean you need a clean plate? What are you guys with your silver balls? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
take a breath
Yeah.
and explain.
And I think that you're right, Kathy. It's speaking up. It's speaking. I mean, as you know, like I was the person that would go out to every department and say, "Hey, greens, remember when you put the plant there? I need you to put it back and rotate it 20 more degrees to the right because I'm not going to replace your plant. And hey, those wig lines, as you remember, Kathy, the wig lines, right? This is crooked, or I can still see the follicles. Or can you please do a little better so that I can do my job well?" And I think it's getting out there, it's speaking, and sometimes it's speaking first. When you sit at that table, you speak first so everybody sees and understands that you are just as part of the
She's
conversation,
important.
not guiding the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think it is kind of getting uncomfortable, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, which, whenever we walk into a room, I still to this day am uncomfortable in certain situations, but I just do it anyway. My palms are sweating, don't care, go, like, just go. And I think, Janet, you're right. not everybody has that. And I remember there was an artist when I was at ILM. I don't know if she's still there. And I'd asked her about being a supervisor. She was a compositor at the time. And she's like, I don't know. I just don't think that I can give it the time that it takes. I remember her saying this to me when I was a coordinator there or something. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, what does that mean? I was, younger. I didn't have children yet. She was, in that phase of life. And I just was like, what do you mean? Of course you can. What do you, but to your point, we're not built for that. The right. system by which we make movies is not built for women, particularly on set. And, particularly, when we have to make these calls, and I call friends who are women, or even fathers, to be fair, right? Who are like, I just can't take that gig, on the other side of the planet for 12 months. I can't disappear for that long. And so I think that, what we try to do, and what I try to do, is I keep an eye out for those, for those folks. I'm like, I know they have a 5-year-old child. I know what region they need to be. And I know when that movie comes, and I'm calling them first. And so I do try to strategize that when casting and crewing a show, because it's the best that I can do, right? With the tools that are not set up for us to succeed as people who have families, right? So families are really a really hard thing to overcome, in both spaces. I think the facility world and the freelance world.
And I think we should encourage, what I also try to do as a mentor is say, you guys, you can have it all. You can have the family, you can have the partner, you can have your full-time job. There's no reason why you can't do it all. We can push babies out. we can do it.
I just want to get your opinions on where are we today with women in the industry? What kinds of programs do you feel could help further uplift women? And what are your companies doing in that vein?
I can jump in. I think, I touched on it a little bit earlier as well, but I think everyone has to be on board with investing in the future, right? And so that it's actually formalizing it. Like we've been lucky. We found our role models. We got these opportunities. There were a lot of things we lucked into, and also, had the talent to do it. But I think if we formalize things like mentorships, apprenticeships, listening sessions, stretch assignments. One of the things we're doing at ILM is trying to break the catch-22, where when we're staffing for a show, we always pick a supervisor who's been a supervisor before, which means that it's the same pool of talent. So we're trying to be really objective and transparent about what it takes to be considered for a role like that. Be really clear with our aspiring leaders where they, meet the criteria and where they need to develop. And then we ask our, leaders, the producers and supervisors, to take chances, to give opportunities. So, there's no magic bullet, but I think continuing to shine a light like the VES is doing right now, having conversations, and looking for ways to formalize opportunities is the way to go on the facility side.
I think, Janet, you make a good point too, that like our supervisor pool too is aging. So to your point, we keep making the same calls to the same, folks. We have done a kind of a co-supervisor situation in that case. I think formalizing things with whether it's our vendors or whether it's with our crew directly, for us, maybe it's additional flights, maybe it's bringing out your family, maybe it's, it's all those kinds of things that can try to bring as much of your circle with you as possible when we do travel. I find that, and Kathy, you probably have, do this a lot too, even just the mentorship from the studio side down. Again, Stephanie Allen was my first studio executive to give me the full job, and that was with a lot of push and encouragement from Bad Robot, the folks at Bad Robot, and JJ and Tommy Harper, who I've worked with many times on the physical production side, but also Steph Allen taught me everything I know. I feel like I know how to be a producer because she walked me through it. And it wasn't like, here's this show, and Chrysta, you don't know what you're doing, so I'm not going to hire you. She was like, no, we're going to sit down. We're going to do the schedule together. We're going to do the budget together. And so I've taken that too, that every, producer that I bring in, every supervisor, we got to walk through. These are the things that are necessary. This is what to look out for when your director says this. And so we do really try to give people a little guidance along the way, because we have to grow the pool. We have to grow the pipeline. And so those are some of the small things. Look, I think there are some systematic things we still have a lot of work to do, right?
You've teed me up as well. Thank you, Chrysta, because we have so many shows, all sizes, and I'd like to think, I have definitely taken more than a few PMs who and brought them up to producer, even skipping the associate producer role, but that is also another segue to become a producer. And we've taken chances. There's one lady who has been a PM in Australia for 15 years. It's like, well, you need the chance. And she's our VFX producer on a show that's in Australia right now. And you're exactly right, Chrysta. It's mentoring them, showing them what we do. How do you look at things top level? As a studio, I'd like to say Skydance is all about diversity between our TV and feature divisions. Dana Goldberg and is just a key figure and all about diversity and giving female directors an opportunity. So I love that. And I just think with us, it's mentoring the younger, and they don't have to be younger. They can, I mean, more green people who've maybe been a PM. And I think that's going to help us all, because we are in a world where our budgets are a lot less. Mm-hmm. So you can't really afford that person that you love who is at the top of the market on all your shows.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Another way of saying that is hiring for potential, mm-hmm. And seeing something that you can invest, seeing something in someone that you can invest in and show them the ropes and pay it forward. It's actually a wonderful thing.
And it's fun. It's so rewarding.
It is.
That's wonderful. You guys have been wonderful. I think we're probably towards the end of the time. I could talk to you guys for hours. It's just, you're such great role models, and your advice of find your family, be willing to work hard, and don't be afraid to take your seat at the table. That's just wonderful advice to the next generation. I really appreciate all of you and your time and your expertise. So thank you very much.
This was really fun.
Thanks for asking us.
Yeah, well, we're going to do it again. We're going to do a lot more of these, because I think we need a sense of community. I think the women in this industry need to come together and support each other. So
I will say one thing just to close out, that the VES does so well, which is to recognize the contribution of producers, in the VES categories, that it's mandatory to have
absolutely
the overall visual effects producer. It's huge, because we have to fight tooth and nail for that recognition and in other award settings. And I think it's you guys are leading the charge there. And there's a lot more we can do. I know, I've been talking to Brooke as well, Kathy, and I know she's supportive, but it's hard to make that change.
Well, we're just getting started.
Yeah. And that's so true with the VFX producers on the ticket.
Yeah,
always.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll let you have the rest of your evening. And it's really so lovely to see all of you.